What's going on, everyone? The Lakers and Russell Westbrook. What is going to end up happening? Which trade are the Lakers actually going to go for? Now, there is always the possibility that the Lakers don't find a trade that's worth pulling off for Russell Westbrook, end up keeping Russ, and run the season accordingly. Now, obviously, the Lakers nation and majority of us want us to see Russell Westbrook on another team and us acquire assets that will help us this season. But the Lakers also want to maintain future cap flexibility in order to acquire a guy like Kyrie Irving or another big free agent. Problem is outside of Kyrie, there isn't really any game-changing free agents next season. So do the Lakers take a little chance? Do they try to recoup a draft pick? Obviously, they don't want to give up both picks unless it's something that actually makes them a contender. But most of the trades, if not all of the trades, don't make them a legit contender. It's not game-changing enough to give up both firsts. But depending on how many picks they have to give up and stuff like that, it is very possible that they could take on some salary. And if they still have a first, they could use that to move off of if a Kyrie Irving or somebody wants to come to Lakers that they feel is game-changing enough. So I wanted to break down the popular trades and, of course, hear your thoughts and opinions on what you think and kind of give you the analysis of each individual trade as well as like the impact on both teams and which ones are the most realistic. So let's jump into it immediately with the Pacers trade. Now, this is the one that even myself thinks is the best trade overall, primarily because Miles Turner, he could play alongside Anthony Davis. He could also play the four. You know, if Anthony Davis is getting some rest, you can play them together. You can interchange them. He also gives some insurance for if Anthony Davis misses games. Problem with Miles Turner is he is an incredible talent. He's a great shot blocker. He's going to get you, 12 to 15 points a game. He's going to get you, 7 to 8 rebounds a game. He's going to get you several block shots. Now, Miles Turner and Anthony Davis together in that front court would be the best defensive front court in the league. So that is something that would be huge in regards to Lakers. But Miles Turner is also a guy that has had some injury history. And the last thing you want is to have Miles Turner and Anthony Davis out, and you invested so much into those two, and it's like, they're not even on the court. Ideally, if one misses, hopefully you have the other one, or they both play a good majority of the season. Now, obviously, they're both probably going to miss some time, but you want them to play the bulk of the season. But I still think that Miles Turner is a big enough needle mover, not to the level of like Kyrie or something like that, but a big enough needle mover in the sense of like what his impact will be on both sides of the ball would be huge for the Lakers. And so that's why I think Miles Turner makes a lot of sense. And then for Buddy Hield, now Buddy Hield is a dead-eye shooter. Problem is, he is atrocious on the defensive end. Even if you look up his defensive rating and stuff, he is like 5 points worse than league average. Like, it's not very good. He's very one-dimensional. You know what you get. You get a dead-eye shooter, a guy that can light it up, a guy that'll knock down a bunch of threes for you. But that's really all he provides. His contract is also a bit of concern. And that's the thing with all of these trades. All of these trades have somebody that the Lakers are going to have to take on that's going to have multi-years on their contract. It's just how all these trades shape up, and salaries have to match and things like that. And usually there's, larger salaries on multi-year deals. So even in the Buddy Hield deal, you'd still have that multi-year contract, although next year he's an expiring. And if the Lakers are able to keep a pick, well, then you could move that pick with a Buddy Hield in order to go and get, another star in free agency. Miles Turner, you could either re-sign him or let him walk if you can get like a Kyrie, obviously is the goal. And I know people are like, let the Kyrie thing go, this, that, and the other. Here's the thing. The Lakers, whether you want them to or not, the Lakers are trying to preserve cap for Kyrie Irving. It's a reality. Whether he comes or not, that's a different situation. We don't know. We'll see what develops. But that's why the Lakers want to keep the cap preserved in case Kyrie comes. That's just what it is. And so the Lakers are going to make a trade according to that idea. And that's something we have to keep in mind. Problem is that Miles Turner also wants $20+ million. Now, look, if the Lakers give up both firsts and end up letting these guys go and ultimately get Kyrie, then it's essentially a wash because the Lakers were going to trade both first to go get Kyrie anyway. Now, obviously, the Lakers could just stand pat with Russell Westbrook and then sign Kyrie that way. So, that just depends on what the Lakers really want to do. Do they like these deals enough That's why I don't think a deal gets done if they have to give up both firsts, unless they just get like, a plethora of players that really changes the game. And I just don't see this deal getting done as it's currently constructed. The Indiana Pacers just want way too much for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner right now. They wanted Talen Horton-Tucker, who is now gone, on top of 2 first-round picks, and they wanted the Lakers to take on Daniel Theis, which basically ruins any cap flexibility going forward. He has 3 years on his deal. And on top of that, you'd have Buddy Hield, who has 2 years. So you're taking on a ton of long-term salary. Now, if you could do the deal and only move off of 1 pick, then yeah, I would probably take Theis as well, because you could use that pick to move off of him. Buddy Hield, an expiring contract, a team might take him for a couple seconds, something like that, or somebody that just needs to unload. Maybe even the Nets. Maybe you could work out a sign and trade or something like that for Kyrie. If Kyrie really does say, hey, I'm leaving you and going to the Lakers, so either get something back or get nothing. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a reality that the Lakers are trying to, preserve for is Kyrie. So they're going to make their assessments based on that thinking, based on that logic. And that's something that I need people to understand as well. So this deal, currently constructed, I think is the least desirable deal for one, and it has the least likelihood to happen unless the Pacers decide to change course and lower their asking price. Now, that could be a real possibility because Utah is a team that really is in the conversation now. So maybe the Pacers are like, hey, we want to move these guys and get something, so let's lower our price. Speaking of, let's talk the Jazz deal. Now, the Jazz is, in my opinion, the most likely trade that's going to happen. Utah needs to move off of a ton of players because they just have like 20 players on their roster. And their only other options other than the Laker trade is either take on long-term salaries and like 3-for-1 swaps, which they're a rebuilding team. They want their books clear, stuff like that. It doesn't make sense for them. A team like Miami, they would probably take, several of the Jazz's vets and move off of like a Duncan Robinson or something like that. Absolutely. But do the Jazz want to take on his long-term salary? It doesn't make sense. The other alternative is like, to unload Mike Conley, they're probably going to have to move off of picks. Or again, take on salary because you got to match contracts and stuff. And how many teams have large contracts that are expiring that they could trade? Utah has a couple, but outside of that, the ultimate board wipe is Russell Westbrook. And that's the thing people need to keep in mind. The reason teams want Russ, and I see this comment more times than you think you would, the reason teams want Russ and the reason there's so many options out there for us is because of the expiring contract. Teams don't want Russ just for Rust. They want him for his contract because it's a board wipe. It clears your books. And a team like the Jazz that have to move off of several players could use a guy like Russell Westbrook to do a 3 or 4 player for one swap, buy out Russ, and then there you go. Now you have the team that you want and you can move forward and you don't have to do 5, 6, 7 deals to try to get something done or take on bad salaries or this, that, and the other. So now the Lakers have reportedly interested in Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, and Bogdanovich. Not all 3 together, just more Bog and then one of Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson. Now, I think it just depends on what the asking price for the Jazz is. Now, you might be thinking, why haven't the Jazz and the Lakers done this deal if both sides really want to get a deal done? Because a trade can't happen until the 6th of this month. Because if the Lakers want a Beasley or a Vanderbilt, not saying that they'll get either, but if you're going to negotiate those two, which very likely the Lakers are going to end up with one of those two. It's going to be Bogdanovich, very likely Beasley, and then one of Clarkson or Conley, and Lakers will give up a pick, things like that. But none of that can happen until the 6th. So this upcoming Tuesday would be the day that the Lakers could start really doing a deal. Not saying that that's going to be official. It's not a deadline. It's just when the first day happens in which everything can be official. It might take longer, but that's the first day that could actually, things could work out for the Lakers. So we don't expect to trade until then. Now, it's possible that we get like a agreed upon deal. Like maybe Woj breaks the news that like, hey, this deal was worked out, but it won't be official till Tuesday. That could end up happening, but they can't actually file the paperwork for this trade until the 6th. That's when it becomes official. But an agreed upon, that could end up happening between now and then, but we're already on Sunday, so it's 2 days away. So don't expect anything until very likely Sunday, or like maybe Monday night you start hearing the word, because I believe it's at midnight is when they can officially make the trade. So that could end up happening. But very likely it's going to be Bogdanovich, Clarkson, and Beasley would be my guess of the 3 players the Lakers get back for Russ, and then also moving off of 1 first. Now, Conley, I think, is the better fit. Yes, injury history, yes, age is a concern, but he's a guy that can play on the ball, off the ball, and just really be a solid vet and contributor. He's not going to be a guy that's going to demand a start. He's going to be a guy that's going to come in and do what he needs to do. Obviously, Jordan Clarkson's not going to demand a start either, but we have so many guards that do the same thing as Jordan Clarkson that Jordan Clarkson kind of becomes redundant. Not just that, Jordan Clarkson is extremely inefficient and not a very good three-point shooter. So that's a huge issue, and he doesn't play defense. At least Conley will play defense, and he's actually a pretty solid defender. He's not a great defender, mainly because of his age, but he's still a guy that could fit within a team defense, within team defensive schemes. He's a guy, again, you could start him with LeBron, without LeBron, have him come off the bench, gives you several options. And then, of course, Kendrick Nunn being on the team, he's a better Clarkson. I mean, the guy averaged 20 a game for a finals team as the starting point guard, but he can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He was a 38% three-point shooter last time he played. Yes, there's a lot of questions about his health and injuries, but he seems to be 100%. There's even videos of him working out and doing stuff. So if he is ready to go, then he's just a better option than Clarkson. But you're going to have to take either Clarkson or Conley in a deal. I think the Lakers take whichever one doesn't require as few as picks as possible. Or if you could get Vanderbilt. So, like, I would take on Mike Conley if the Lakers could get Vanderbilt, Beasley, and Bogdanovich. Just because, again, you figure it out, right? With Mike Conley, you do what you have to do to try to unload him the following season if you need to. But you get 2 young, talented players that can really help now and be key pieces for the future, right? Because at some point, you're going to have the post-LeBron era, right? At some point, LeBron is going to leave. If you can get a guy like Beasley, who's got, solid wingspan, 6'4", can shoot the ball. He's great in the catch and shoot. He has like an insane catch and shoot percentage as a spot shooter. You have Vanderbilt, who, yes, he's a little raw. He's not a great three-point shooter. He's not a great free throw shooter, but you can improve in those areas. He's your hustler. He's a guy that can play multiple positions, got some size at 6'9". He's a guy that could be hugely beneficial. He's young. Now, I don't think the Wolves are going to trade Vanderbilt. I don't. But again, it depends on how many players they want to move, how much salary they want to get off of. The Jazz are going to have to make some decisions one way or another. Regardless, if the Lakers are going to do a deal with the Jazz, they're going to have to take on Beasley, Bogdanovich, and then either one of Mike Conley or Jordan Clarkson. Obviously, the Jazz are going to want the Lakers to take on Mike Conley. Lakers, maybe you want to take Jordan Clarkson. I know a lot of people really want the Lakers to take Jordan Clarkson. We already have so many guards, so many undersized guards. We already have several players that do the exact same thing. And we have Kendrick Nunn, who basically does everything Jordan Clarkson does, but better and more efficient. Like, if you think Jordan Clarkson isn't efficient, go look at his stats. Jordan Clarkson is terrible from three-point range. He's a shot clunker. Yes, he can get you a bucket, but in a very inefficient manner. And it's because with Utah, he was able to develop the habit of just a shot chunker because that's what they wanted him to be. They wanted him to just be the guy, just take the shot, and he's a black hole. But if you watch him play, he takes some of the worst shots I've ever seen. He forced the issue tremendously. Not a great three-point shooter, can't play off the ball very well, and it would be nice to have a guy like Conley who can do both. He can play on the ball, he can play off the ball, he can give you better production defensively, as I mentioned earlier, but his salary is a big thing. At least Clarkson, he's on a more manageable, reasonable salary. And it's like, do you move off him? But if you can keep a first and take on Conley, I think that that's another alternative, right? Because if you need to, right, if you need to get off of his salary, well, you have that extra first to move Conley. A team might be willing to take on Conley's salary and then to get that first and then allow that to expire. So it just makes things more manageable. But if you could get these two young guys, they help you now, they help you for the future. I think you do what you got to do here. So I would definitely rank the Jazz higher than the Pacers just because of the asking price. I just think the asking price is too high. But also, if you can get Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt, Beasley, even Conley, and Bogdanovich, I think overall that's better than Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. That would be the best deal, I think, possible. But again, I don't think they're going to give up Vanderbilt. Moving on to the more recent news is the Knicks. The Knicks are another team looking to potentially acquire Russell Westbrook. Obviously, the Lakers were supposed to be in a 3-team deal between the Knicks, the Jazz, and themselves to do the Donovan Mitchell, right? It would have been a 3-team trade, but the Knicks didn't get Donovan Mitchell. Thing is, they still extended RJ Barrett, and they have some salaries they need to move off of. Now, Cam Reddish, he was almost traded to the Lakers. He was basically, they were ready to file the paperwork, and then the Knicks got greedy. Cam Reddish was supposed to be a Laker last season. Not just that, Cam Reddish has reportedly requested a trade. He wants to change the scenery. He wants to get off of the Knicks team. Tibbs never wanted Cam Reddish to begin with. He never even really gave him a chance. Problem is, too, is that he was on an Atlanta team that instead of growing and going the youth route, they decided to end up going the vet route and going and getting a bunch of guys that play his position. So Cam Reddish has never really had a fair shake from the moment he's gotten in the league. Has a lot of promise, has good size at 6'8". He could be a 3-and-D guy. He is very likely going to need some time to develop. Hasn't got a bunch of heavy doses of minutes, but I do think he is a low-risk, high-reward type guy. Really would work out the need for a wing player. Also, you could get Evan Fournier. There's your 3-and-D, starting, shooting guard. You could have, Patrick Beverley, Fournier. You could have Cam Reddish, LeBron Davis. Like, that could be your closing lineup. I think that this would be a solid deal, too. Very likely, what ends up happening is Derrick Rose would probably be included in that as well. So you'd probably get Rose, Fournier, and Cam Reddish in a deal. But here's the thing. Lakers probably, or at least they shouldn't, don't have to move any draft picks in a deal with the Knicks, because the whole reason the Knicks want Russell Westbrook, again, for the contract, not for him to play. Now, could they run him as star power, maybe put some butts in seats? It's a possibility, but realistically, they're going to buy him out like all of the teams on the list, because the Knicks really need to move off of money. Problem is, they're not going to be a very good team. Maybe they are a play-in team, but it's very likely they're not a very good team. They are ridiculously in the cap, and they need to move off of some of these long-term contracts. Cam Reddish wants out. Not just that, but Fournier and Reddish, they were supposed to be included in the 3-team deal. Lakers would have gotten Fournier, Reddish, and then Bogdanovich was another player that was in the conversation. So that would have been great. That would have been a huge possibility. Well, now you can't do that. Maybe you could still work out a 3-team deal where something like that happens, but it makes things a lot harder without Donovan Mitchell. Very likely it'd probably be a Knicks-Lakers just straight up trade. Cam Reddish, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose. If you don't give up any picks, this might be the best deal. Because Fournier, very similar contract to Buddy Hield, so there's not really anything crazy there. The Lakers were also going to, we're contemplating taking on Joe Harris. Again, very similar deal. If you keep both firsts, you have the assets to move off of Fournier, who would be expiring the following year, and Derrick Rose, who's on a reasonable contract. You could move off of those guys with those first-round picks if Kyrie wanted to come, so you could still keep the cap flexibility. So, one, you'd have players that would really help you win. Now you get your wing player, you get your shooting guard, and you get kind of a point guard to come in. Fit with Derrick Rose is obviously a big concern, but he's got to be thrown in for the money. I know a lot of people want Randall. One, the Knicks want to kind of see what they have here with Randall and an actual point guard, so that's a big thing. But secondly, Randall He was worse in every category than Russell Westbrook last year. Also, you got to keep in mind fit. How is the fit going to work? Can't play small forward. They've tried in the past, doesn't work. So he has to play power forward. He's not starting over Anthony Davis. Lakers got two big men and Thomas Bryant and Damian Jones, so Anthony Davis doesn't have to play center. So you're basically paying this guy all that money to come off the bench, and how much is he going to play? Like, that becomes a big thing. Yeah, he would be great insurance if Anthony Davis gets hurt, but you're not operating this team on the assumption Davis is going to miss long, extensive periods of time. Your hope is that he doesn't. So I think no matter how you shake it, Randall makes no sense from an efficiency standpoint, a contract standpoint, and a fit standpoint. So I don't see that being the case. Again, Knicks want Randall still. So they would move off of Fournier, Reddish, and probably Derrick Rose for financial reasons. You don't have to do any trades because this is a mutually beneficial trade. You don't have to give up any picks. Knicks don't have to give up any picks. It's just straight up swap. We need some veterans that help us out. You need salary relief. You need to clear some players and some salary off your roster. Get some of these young guys some run, some experience, things like that. You don't want Reddish. Fournier is expendable. You've tried to trade Fournier on several occasions, and Derrick Rose is just for salary purposes, which he's not that huge for you. So not a big deal. You got Quickly. You got, Grimes. You got all these guys that you really want to kind of build for the future. McBride. Those are the guys you're running with. You're starting the youth movement you're moving off of. So to me, no picks, this is the best deal. Because you get the young wing that can really help you now and for the future. You get your 3-and-D guy, shooting guard that's got some size, that can, play on the ball, off the ball. He's a guy that can, play small forward in certain situations, can play shooting guard in certain situations. Like, you get that versatility with both these guys. Cam Reddish can play the 4 or the 3 because he's got the size, certain matchups, things like that. Get a guy in Derrick Rose. Maybe you could even move Derrick Rose and maybe a first, maybe try to go get another Wayne, or maybe go, maybe use the first and some stuff to go and get maybe you could work out a 3-team deal, like I said, to go get Bogdanovich, maybe get some pieces. I don't know. There's ways to work around it. There's ways to figure it out. I just think when it comes to these deals, I think whichever one costs the least for the Lakers is the best deal. If you can, if the Knicks deal, you can do the Knicks deal and not give up any first round picks, I think you do that deal because you get the depth, you get the needs that you need, and you get to keep your picks. So if you need to move off those guys, you can move off those guys. If it's the Jazz deal, I think you only have to give up one first because, again, Utah, they have to move off of these guys. Again, mutually beneficial trade. Lakers aren't going to have to give up a bunch. But for a young guy like Beasley, you're getting Bogdanovich, you're getting, a Jordan Clarkson. That's worth a first. Okay, fine. And you're getting off of Russ. Okay, one first. Cool. You get to keep the second first. Then I think that's probably a good trade. And then if it comes down to the Pacers, problem is the Pacers want way too much for guys that just aren't worth it. Who's knocking on the door? Who's banging on the door to go get those deals? I mean, out of all these deals, I think personally, just based on the information we have right now, I think the Knicks deal with no first is the best deal. Then Jazz deal with one first is the second best, and then the Pacers deal I think is not. But Vanderbilt, if you can get Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt might be the best deal out of all of these. But the Pacers deal, nobody's banging on the door for Buddy Hield. No one's banging on the door for Miles Turner. Miles Turner's leaving you next season. If you want to let him walk and get nothing for it, then fine, so be it. The Pacers are just asking for way too much, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If you want to do Westbrook and a first, maybe a couple seconds, maybe a pick swap, something like that, okay, cool, let's do that. But Lakers aren't giving up both firsts for those guys. You're not taking on Daniel Theis's contract. You took him on a bad contract. That's your fault. Nobody's trading for Buddy Hield. Maybe next year you can move him, but this year you ain't. And nobody's trading for Miles Turner. No one's giving up assets for Miles Turner. So good luck. But anyway, those are my thoughts and opinions, and there's the breakdown of these trades. Of course, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Out of these trades, which one is your favorite? Which one do you think is the best? Which one do you want to see happen? How do you feel about these deals? Do you have any theories, ideas, team trades, stuff like that? I'd love to hear all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section.
That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.